Welcome back to Great American. In today's episode, we are going to talk about one of the most unexpected and powerful moves made during Donald Trump's presidency: criminal justice reform. For decades, this issue had divided the country. Many leaders had spoken about it, but very few had delivered meaningful results. Trump, however, surprised critics and supporters alike by signing into law the First Step Act, a bill that changed lives across America. For years, the justice system was criticized for being unfair, especially to low-level offenders and minority communities. Long sentences for nonviolent crimes, outdated laws, and overcrowded prisons created a cycle of hopelessness. Families were broken, communities suffered, and second chances were denied. The call for reform grew louder, but in Washington, real change always seemed impossible. That was until Trump decided to take action. The First Step Act, signed into law in 2018, became one of the most significant bipartisan achievements of his presidency. Both Democrats and Republicans came together to support it, proving that justice reform was not a partisan issue but an American issue. The law gave inmates new opportunities for early release, expanded rehabilitation programs, and reduced unfair sentencing. It recognized that some people deserved a second chance, a chance to rebuild their lives and contribute positively to society. For many prisoners, this law was exactly that, a first step. It allowed nonviolent offenders to serve shorter sentences if they showed good behavior, took educational courses, or participated in job training programs. This was not about being soft on crime. It was about being smart on justice. The reform focused on rehabilitation instead of endless punishment, creating paths for people to return to their families and communities as better, stronger citizens. One of the most emotional moments came when Trump invited former inmates to the White House to share their stories. Men and women who had once been locked away for years were now free, standing next to the president, telling the world about their second chance. Tears, gratitude, and hope filled the room. For them, this was not just policy, it was life-changing reality. Their children had their parents back, families were reunited, and dignity was restored. Trump highlighted these stories again and again. He wanted Americans to see the faces behind the numbers, to understand that reform was about human lives. He often said that everyone deserves the opportunity to rewrite their story. Supporters praised his courage to break away from the traditional tough-on-crime approach and instead embrace a policy that combined justice with compassion. Critics argued that the reform did not go far enough. They said deeper changes were still needed in sentencing laws, policing, and rehabilitation funding. Yet even they admitted the First Step Act was exactly what its name suggested: a beginning. It was proof that bipartisan solutions were possible and that real reform could come from unexpected places. The reform also had a larger impact on America's view of leadership. For many years, Republicans were not seen as champions of criminal justice reform, but Trump challenged that perception. By pushing this legislation, he showed that bold action could break stereotypes and create new alliances. Civil rights groups, faith leaders, and community activists who had never imagined working with his administration found common ground in this effort. The numbers spoke for themselves. Thousands of inmates were released earlier than expected, many of them returning to society with training and support that helped them stay out of prison. Families were reunited. Communities welcomed home their members with hope instead of shame. These were victories not just for Trump, but for the entire country. At its heart, the First Step Act was about redemption. It was about the belief that people should not be defined forever by their worst mistakes. America was built on the promise of second chances, and this law brought that promise back to life for many who had lost it. Trump's decision to push for this reform reminded the nation that justice must also include mercy. Looking back, criminal justice reform became one of the defining legacies of his presidency. It was not the kind of achievement filled with flashy headlines or constant media attention, but it was deeply personal for those who benefited. It showed a side of leadership that was willing to take risks, willing to listen, and willing to fight for fairness even when it surprised the political establishment. This project remains a testament to the power of compassion in politics. It proved that laws can change, lives can be saved, and hope can be restored when leaders have the courage to act. Whether one supported Trump or not, there is no denying that the First Step Act gave thousands of Americans a chance to live new lives, and that is why this reform stands as one of the most meaningful achievements of the Trump presidency. It was not about power, not about party, but about people. It was about mothers and fathers going home, about children growing up with their parents by their side, and about the belief that no matter how far someone has fallen, redemption is always possible. That is the legacy of Trump's criminal justice reform, a legacy built on justice, compassion, and the enduring promise of America.